Yo, what's going on, everybody? My name is Dylan. You guys are going to be chilling with me today. My co host is not going to be with me today. However, we're still going to talk about a whole bunch of good stuff. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is kind of just recapping the rest of the Vince McMahon documentary. Pretty much the rest of the documentary is a lot of common sense and knowledge that it was already pretty much out there. So we're just going to be recapping and putting a little button on the Vince McMahon documentary today. But if you guys like the video, make sure you guys are smashing that like button. Subscribe to the channel, guys, because we are close to 400 subscribers. Want to try to get there by the end of this week. I think we're sitting at around like 380 right now. So very, very close. I know we can do it with you guys. And don't be afraid to share the content to anybody who you think would like and enjoy what we talk about over here. All things wrestling. So where should we start? Well, we're going to start and jump right into it. So episode 4 basically talks about the Attitude Era. Now, I'm not going to be going into a deep dive with everything here, just pretty much what was touched on the rest of this documentary. So in the 4th episode, starts pretty much talking about how the Attitude Era was born. From the arrival of DX, they went into some of the ECW stuff. Now, personally, I think it's a pretty darn shame what happened to ECW, man. How it pretty much just, it went bankrupt, basically, Vince ended up buying it out at a later date, not during the whole WCW wars and stuff like that. I kind of got into ECW in like 2005 when they brought it back. When they had like the whole RVD Cena and stuff like that. That was also pretty cool. But yeah, they were doing much crazier stuff back in the day. Kind of an unsustainable business model, and that is one of the main reasons why they had to close their doors. They then went ahead and talked about my co-host, who's not with me today, Unbreakable Kicks, his greatest and his favorite wrestler of all time, which is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Think about this real quick, guys. The timeline that we could have had a wrestling, could have had a WWE without Stone Cold Steve Austin. Think about that. Let it sit for a second. And this is why, because we talked about it in a previous episode with the curtain call. Now, if you guys remember with the whole curtain call situation, Vince needed to punish somebody, so they punished Triple H. Triple H was actually slated to win the King of the Ring tournament. Since they couldn't punish Shawn, pretty much since he was the champion already, somebody had to fall on that sword. Ended up being Triple H. Who did they choose to win that King of the Ring tournament? None other than Stone Cold Steve Austin. Obviously, we got the iconic Austin 316 says, "I just whipped your." And, a star was born that night, and it could have never happened. Insane, man. It's really insane to think about that. And also just to think about Stone Cold's career as a whole, right? I mean, short career. Same with The Rock. Very, very small period of time that they were even in the WWE for. So pretty cool that they touched on that. What else? They also talked about Mike Tyson basically coming in as the special guest referee. That was for the Shawn Michaels and Stone Cold match that was at WrestleMania 14. Just an interesting note on that was that Stephanie actually didn't know that they brought in Mike Tyson, even though he did have that alleged allegation against him. I think he actually went to prison or something like that. I'm not too into all that story, but pretty funny that when she was asked in the documentary, she actually was like, "Oh, I didn't know," and she kind of like just laughed about it, which I thought maybe she was kind of hinting at like, "Oh, well, that's something my dad would do." You know what I mean, Vince. So then we also had the Vince McMahon and Stone Cold feud, which is one of the best and greatest feuds of all time in the WWE. Again, not going to go too much in depth into it, but you know, the Austin versus the McMahon storyline was some of the best content in wrestling history. If you guys haven't seen any of that good stuff, make sure you guys go back and do your research because that was some of the best stuff on television. And then just a thing that they kind of went into, right, is Vince the same as Mr. McMahon? Well, A lot of the people that were introduced or, interviewed on the documentary says Vince is pretty much the same guy. Same guy as he is on television. Obviously, on television, he kinda just turns it up a notch. But yeah, yeah. They, guys that work close with him, like Bruce Pritchard even said, Vince is Vince. You know what I mean? Vince is gonna Vince. And that kinda just tells me, man, yeah, yeah, he's kinda the same guy that he is on television in real life, and maybe he is a bad guy, you know what I mean? Because we're gonna get into it in, the family business episode, but I don't think that you get that many allegations against you if you're just a run-of-the-mill, happy-go-lucky guy, you know what I mean? So, then you also they talked about The Rock and his Nation of Domination run, him turning heel because they weren't happy with the whole Rocky Maivia storyline. And yeah, man, obviously, again, not gonna touch on some of that stuff. This is a Mr. McMahon documentary, right? So I was hoping for a lot more good stuff about Vince, not so much about the history of wrestling. Like, we've all seen documentaries, and we kind of all know if you're a true fan, we kind of all know, the history behind a lot of this stuff already. So we had that, and then pretty much there was an interesting um, topic of conversation. Somebody asked him if Vince thought that the product from the Attitude Era was family friendly. I don't think it was family friendly. I don't think it really necessarily matters. I mean, there was, like, something, in there about, like, basically Netflix cooked, okay? They absolutely cooked Vince because everything he said, they had, like, a counter montage. Like, I think one of the things he said was, like, nobody actually got really hurt, and they just showed, like, people actually getting seriously injured and stuff like that. So yeah, they kinda set him up on that one, but listen, there's movies that aren't family friendly, you know what I mean? Like, it kinda just comes to, like, your parents. I mean, if you're a parent and your child wants to go watch some of this stuff, hey, as a parent, you just tell them, "No, you can't watch this stuff." You know what I mean? It's all, that's just my opinion on it, like, bad parenting's bad parenting, and I gotta let your kid watch something crazy on television, so that is what it is. Man, we're kinda getting it, a little sad here, guys. We're gonna get this raw too, guys. I'm by myself today, so um, gonna get a little bit sad. Man, they talked about the whole Owen Hart tragedy, man. Heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. You know, a whole debate in this documentary on whether they should have continued the show or not. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on this, guys, down below in the comments. Okay. Granted, it is hard, right? It's very hard to try to put yourself in Vince's shoes. I'm talking about as far as the business here, whether you keep the show going or not. Here's why: they're not the first to do it. Okay. There's been stuff in the past, even up until just a couple years ago, where there's tragedies, man, and the show goes on. Think about NASCAR, for instance. We've had deaths in NASCAR. Race continues. I think of Dale Earnhardt, right? I also think of just a couple years ago in the NFL, Damar Hamlin. Granted, they didn't know he was dead, right? But the dude was dead on the field. And they continued. So, if you say, obviously, this is terrible, and I personally don't think it probably should have continued, right? I think people in the audience would understand, man, if there was a death that you don't continue the damn show. But there was an important thing in this documentary that apparently is debunked. The thing about Owen's blood being on the mat. Blue Meanie, if you guys remember from the BWO from back in the day, was on a podcast recently. He basically said no, that was false. That was actually not true. That the blood came from a match that was previously, on the card. I think it was like the Hardy Boys match or something like that previously in the night. And it was actually their blood that was on the mat. It just so happened to be that, like where Owen landed, which is, this sounds, terrible, but where he landed, that blood was already on the mat. I think the important takeaway from that whole part of it, right, is just how cold Vince is as a person. He's just business minded. All the guy thinks about and truly cares about is the business. And hearing him talk about it and kind of process it, it was sad, man. It was sad, a little bit disturbing at some of the just how he kind of talks about stuff nonchalantly, you know what I mean? Like, man, again, kind of takes you back to like, is this dude a good person or not? You know what I mean? But yeah, that whole thing was a tragedy. So, but that pretty much wrapped up episode 4. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna finish this thing off, guys. So we got 2 more episodes to go. Let's dive into episode 5, which was the family business episode. You're gonna get a lot of the business talk on this one, right? So you had Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, their whole storyline, basically how Vince wanted them to actually get married in real life, and Shane wasn't about it, and how the storyline on television turned into their real life relationship on how they got married on television. Vince actually wanted their real marriage, like in real life, to be televised. Again, he literally just cares about business. This guy. Um, again. Um, and it kind of, segues into this next one where they talked about Trish, the Linda, and the Vince story as well. Now, Trish actually kind of defended Vince in her part in this whole documentary. She basically defended him at every turn. To be fair, because some of the people that were on the doc were saying, how twisted it is. And listen, it is true, right? Like, he's the head of creative at the time. He's the one that makes these storylines. He's the one that has the end results. He knows what's going to be going on. So if you're going to have you know, a chick on there and you're going to have put her in a relationship with yourself on television, you kind of know what you're doing. But she defended him the whole time. A lot of people were saying, he did this stuff. He's weird, and hey, kind of backs up all those allegations from back in the day. But Trish actually defended him during that whole thing. They also went into the Sable, sued Vince and WWE, got paid like a couple $1 million settlement. Then Vince hired her back, and they did another storyline with him and her. Weird, right? I didn't know about that. Um, why sue the guy, settle, and then go back to the workplace that you sued and pretty much do a more detailed storyline with the guy? Little weird. They also talked about the XFL. XFL failed after one season. We kind of know how it is today, right? The Rock bought the XFL. It's also not doing well. One of the things that was also talked about too was the WWF becoming WWE. Now, obviously, this was due to you know, um, they had to make a change, right? Like where the business was going. However, the actual name going from World Wrestling Federation to World Wrestling Entertainment had nothing to do with the fact other than the World Wildlife Fund actually had the trademark for WWF. You believe that? I actually had no idea about that. Um, I really didn't. I thought it was just because, business is changing, times are changing. They did the whole campaign to get the F out, to turn it into more sports entertainment. And really, it just had to do with a trademark and a lawsuit. Then went into Hogan Rock Mania 18 now. Listen, okay, I'm gonna try to save this because I want to talk about this with my co-host Unbreakable, on a different episode. I think it'd be kind of fun to kind of talk about that because I personally have that as one of the greatest, not only just one of the greatest Mania matches of all time, but one of the greatest matches of all time. We get into it. Stay tuned. I'm gonna save that one. Then kind of gets into the ruthless aggression era a little bit. Again, pretty much how times are changing. Um, you know, Vince wanted to shake stuff up. So what did he do? Created a new era, the ruthless aggression era, and enter John Cena. John Cena is pretty much the guy that ushered in this new era when you think about it. With the whole Kurt Angle, and John making his debut. Kurt's in the ring. What quality do you possess that makes you think you can beat me? Cena goes, ruthless aggression. slaps him, and the rest is history. I mean, the GOAT was born that day. Y'all might have different opinions. Let them know, let me know in the comment section below. But, then it goes into the doctor of thugonomics. Again, man, Cena was ever evolving, always changing. You know what I mean? The dude was about to be cut, gets on a bus with other wrestlers. Stephanie McMahon just so happened to be on the bus. He starts rapping. New character was born. Another thing, Shane wanted to buy the UFC. Vince didn't want it. I just thought that was interesting now, right? Because now they are the same company. WWE and UFC have now merged into the TKO group. So I did think that that was interesting. Shane kind of just wanted to run his own company. Also wanted to, impress his father, get his father's approval. He didn't want it. Vince also weird, okay? Weird dude. Wanted a story where he actually got Stephanie pregnant. Yeah, I'm gonna let that sink in with you for a second. I'll wait. Dude was strange, man. And there's again another thing. Dude's all about business. Didn't really care about what other people thought about him, even his family members. I mean, his children. So, again, I'm gonna wait. Probably a bad dude, right? Probably a bad dude. let's let's get to the finish here, ladies and gentlemen. We are almost there. So the finish, literally, episode 6 is called The Finish. Weird intro. Weird intro. Talking about the guy has 2 brains, what he's thinking about. I'll let you guys watch it. Very strange. It was very, very strange. They kind of just talked about that the one storyline where he was faking his own death, right? Just kind of like how Vince was getting crazier and crazier with the whole Mr. McMahon character. And then we had the whole Chris Benoit situation. I'm gonna call it a situation. I'm not really gonna call it a, I don't know what you would call it, right? It's a tragedy, but also at the same time, he did it. I'm not saying it's the whole thing, the whole situation is a tragedy, but man, that is a terrible, disgusting act. You know what I mean? On what he did. Granted, in the documentary, they were talking about CTE, and they were also talking about roid rage. A lot of the guys on the documentary also said, like, listen, a lot of the guys took steroids. Not everybody was beating people up, and not everybody was murdering people. So there's kind of that. They didn't really believe the whole roid rage, roid rage, I should say, situation. A lot of the doctors and stuff were saying, oh, it's because of all the steroids. Kind of brought up the whole steroid allegations again as well. And then they talked about CTE. Now, one of the doctors, said that Chris Benoit had the worst brain damage that he had ever seen by anybody. CTE is a legit real thing. Okay. Boxers suffer from it. NFL players suffer from it. Anything that has to do with brain trauma. That's what CTE means. Chronic traumatic. I think it's encephalopathy. Basically just brain trauma. That's all it is. And you know, in the doc they were talking about, so obviously Benoit's one of his finishing moves is he comes off the top rope with the flying headbutt, okay? Vince basically said in there that he never hit his head, and that's what we do. We sell, which means we act like it hurts, but nobody gets hurt. In the documentary, again, they kind of cooked him on this one. They basically had a little montage of every time Benoit came off off the top rope for the headbutt and actually legitimately hit his head. Listen, dude, they were also getting hit with chairs to the head back then. You know what I mean? So even if the dude wasn't coming off the top rope and hitting his head, he's getting brain damage from something else. Now, listen, not everybody who's a professional wrestler is going to get brain damage, and that's my next point here. I love Stone Cold. He's got it. If Stone Cold Steve Austin is not in your top, he's in my top 3. But if he is not in at least your top 5, man, you got to reevaluate yourself because the dude is one of the greatest of all time. Love the guy, but will say I don't. I think he kind of had a bad take on this one. He basically came out and he said that he doesn't believe in CTE. Doesn't believe it, doesn't think it's real. Listen, man, Stone Cold maybe not have had, maybe he doesn't have any symptom or he doesn't suffer from any of the things that has to do with brain trauma, but CTE is a legit real thing. It can be studied. There's scientific data to back this up. So I don't necessarily think you can come out and say that, it's not a real thing because it is. You know what I mean? It's real. Not every professional wrestler is going to have it. Not every boxer is going to suffer from it. Not every NFL player is going to suffer from it, but some do. It's a legit real thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Again, out of that, they banned the headshots with the chair shots to the head. So no more headshots. Again, I think probably the best move. Undertaker was pissed about it. He came out and he said in there, he was pissed. He didn't understand it. Undertaker's an old school dude, so I get it. He liked that because it added impact to matches, kind of solidified things. They got rid of it. I think personally for the better. They also kind of go into pills and steroids again, having to do with injuries and trauma. Guys in this sport in the professional wrestling, we know, right? Suffer from pill addictions. Look at Kurt Angle's documentary. Crazy stuff. Alcoholism, a lot of stuff. So they touched on some of that stuff. And then speaking of brain trauma, they touched on the whole Undertaker Brock Lesnar WrestleMania 30. The streak was broken. And first off, Vince told Taker that, Brock would win the night of WrestleMania 30. Do you guys buy that? Do you guys believe that? I mean, Undertaker's came out and said it as well. I don't know if I believe that. I feel like that's kind of crazy. Like Undertaker's literally Vince's creation, probably one of his greatest creations. You know what I mean? Like Hulk Hogan and Undertaker, probably his two greatest creations, and they're very close. So I can't imagine that he wouldn't have had enough respect for Undertaker in order for him to tell him the finish. You know, like he waited the night of WrestleMania 30 in order to tell him the finish. I think that's a little bit crazy to me. Could have happened, you know what I mean? Could have happened, change could have plans or plans could have changed or whatever. But so that happened. And then what's crazy is Undertaker has said on multiple occasions, multiple podcasts now, multiple shows. He said it in this documentary himself that he had a concussion about 5 to 10 minutes into the match. Doesn't remember anything from the day of Mania. That also doesn't remember anything from the match. Legitimately had a concussion. And Vince and Brock actually went to the hospital with The Undertaker. So they know he had a concussion. Yet Vince in the documentary says that Undertaker never had a concussion. He believed that The Undertaker was in a psychological shock. Again, guys, something off with this guy a little bit, man. Like, he legitimately had a concussion. And he says that Undertaker was just in psychological shock because the streak ended that night. And he didn't want to believe that the streak ended. Again, man, some wild stuff. Talked about the switch to the PG era, the current era that we are in. Who knows when we go to Netflix? Might be TV 14. But they talked about the PG era, kind of just the times changing and ever evolving with the company. They also went into the whole Shane McMahon versus the Undertaker, and how again Shane is vying for Vince's approval. Man, just wanted his father. He wanted him to be proud of him, wanted his approval, and he kind of got it that night. He kind of got it. He went off the cell through the announce table. Good match. And in the back, they kind of showed, a little behind the scenes, peek behind the curtain. Him and Vince kind of embraced in a hug. And I think that's what Shane was looking for pretty much his whole career, to be honest. So pretty cool moment in that. Again, though, like Vince is a cold dude. You know what I mean? Very cold dude. They went into the fact that Vince was like a father figure to many of the wrestlers. Cena said it. Undertaker said it. A lot of guys came out and said that. And then pretty much the end where He was forced to retire from all these sexual assault allegations. The most recent one with Janelle Grant. He was forced to retire. He was forced to sell the company. Sold the company. The WWE UFC merger happened. Um, and that was pretty much it, guys. You know, nothing crazy in this documentary. Okay, nothing crazy in this documentary. Right? You had Vince and all of his, baggage, right? And all the allegations and stuff like that, but nothing else in this documentary was kind of surprising. They went into the history just about the wrestling and stuff like that a little bit, but nothing like earth-shattering in this doc, man. Especially it definitely wasn't a hit piece. The promotion for this documentary from Netflix was like, this is the downfall of Vince McMahon. You know what I mean? Like this when this doc comes out, man, this is a wrap. This is over for your boy. Really wasn't. They only really touched on it because again, Vince declined all rest of the interviews and anything to do with the documentary once all the allegations came back out. And we didn't really hear anything else about it. So again, a lot of this stuff was common knowledge. A lot of this stuff was already on documentaries from the past. A lot of this stuff I knew. A lot of the stuff I feel like a lot of people knew. Some of the stuff they peeked. What I really wish that they would have done with this documentary too is really kind of peel back the curtain a little bit more. Like give us some more behind the scenes footage and stuff that we never seen before, but we just didn't. So I think I would personally rate this documentary out of 10. I think if I were to give it a 5 or a 6, that would be fair. Between a 5 and a 6. I think that's a fair rating for this documentary. Like I said, it's a good watch. If you want to watch something, it's a good watch. But I don't think that you're gonna learn anything, earth shattering from watching this documentary. Main takeaway from this documentary for myself personally, Vince McMahon is a genius. As a businessman, he is a genius. I think he deserves all the flowers and all the credit in the world for taking this business, the wrestling business, to new heights. There is no WWE today. There may even not be any professional wrestling today if it wasn't for Vince McMahon. That's a fact. The guy made this thing global. This guy made this thing mainstream. Um, Ever evolving. Went with the times. Changed when he need to. Maybe not his personal stuff, but the business wise, changed when he need to. And he's literally a mastermind when it comes to the sport of professional wrestling. But as a person, he's probably a bad guy. I don't know him personally. We know what we see. And I don't think that you have all these allegations and all these scandals if you're a run of the mill, happy go lucky, regular average Joe. I think that there's some demons, and I think he's probably deep down inside, he's probably who he projects himself to be on television. Just like everybody said pretty much in the documentary. Guy that works with him hand in hand, Bruce Pritchard, pretty much told us so. Vince is Vince. May just be a turned up, dialed up version of who he is. You know? So yeah, that's it. That's the doc. Vince is genius, but probably a bad dude. So let me know what you guys think about this documentary down below in the comment section. If you guys got any takeaways from the documentary, did you learn anything new? Did you enjoy it? Let us know in the comment section below. And if you guys enjoyed this docu-series that we kinda did right here, recapping all the episodes. I know this one was kinda more of a jam-packed episode, couple episodes within this episode that you guys are watching right now. But, if you enjoyed it, like the video. Also, please subscribe to the channel if you guys are into wrestling. And if you enjoyed today, because we are going to be putting out a ton of content on the channel, we kind of already have. If you guys just took a look at this past weekend for Bad Blood, we put a lot of content out on the channel. Also, follow us on the Instagrams as well. Everything is going to be at Run the Ropes Media. So everything's going to be uniform. Ain't no guessing, no guesswork that you guys have to do. Run the Ropes Media on Instagram. And yeah, man. I'm having fun with this. I'm super excited for where this channel is gonna be going. And, like I said, guys, unfortunately, we didn't have my co-host here today. I do love going back and forth because over on the channel, you guys aren't gonna get one solid opinion where we agree all the time. But I think that that's fun. I think that you guys have been enjoying it. And, yeah, man. So for me, for today, I'm signing off. Thank you guys for watching. And my name is Dylan, and I'm out. Peace.